Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Watts-Reinert, and I'm the CEO at Polytechnics Canada. I'm happy to be moderating today's panel discussion on developing Canada's green talent pipeline. The Polytechnics Canada office, from which I'm participating today, is on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territories from which you are joining us today. Maybe just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We will be starting with a panel discussion, but we're also going to be taking questions from audience members as we go along today. So to ensure I see your question, please type it into the Q&A window. You do have access to both a chat function and a Q&A window, but I am going to be paying more attention to the Q&A. And so if there are things in the chat that we pick up on, that is going to be thank you to my wonderful staff that are supporting us today from the sidelines. We are recording this session and we will make it available on our website after today's event. It's perhaps worth spending a moment on the context for today's discussion. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been watching world leaders, policymakers, and environmentalists in Glasgow talk about the tremendous impact of global climate change. And Canada is just one of many countries considering how best to reduce carbon emissions and to get to net zero. So while most of us likely agree that climate action is critical, it won't happen in a vacuum, and certainly not without the commitment of industry, governments, and individual Canadians. It's also clear that delivering on our net zero ambitions will require a workforce with green skills. And I think our discussion today will make clear that this isn't one discrete set of skills or one occupational group. In fact, these are skills that must be embedded across post-secondary programs and in workplaces across the country. So the work ahead will be done by many hands. I'd now like to welcome our panel, Dr. Janet Morrison, President and Vice Chancellor at Sheridan, Dr. Larry Rosier, President and CEO at Saskatchewan Polytechnic, and Kevin Nielsen, President and CEO at EcoCanada. For those of you interested in reading more detailed biographies for our speakers, I would refer you to Polytechnics Canada's website and the page that we've set up that's dedicated to today's event. So I think that's probably enough from me. And if everyone's ready, why don't we turn our focus to our panelists. So Kevin, let's start with you. EcoCanada does extensive labor market research relating to talent in the environmental sector. From an industry perspective, where are the skills gaps today? Are there occupations that are in particularly high demand? What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Sarah. It's a big question. We could really dedicate the entire session to, but just to start it, I think it's important to sort of define some terms when we talk about the environmental workforce. One of the things that we're very focused on with the labor market research we do at EcoCanada is to focus in on 3 sort of broad subsectors of the workforce. One is environmental protection, which covers the sort of the traditional areas of air, water, land. The other one is management and conservation of natural resources. And the third one is a broader category, which we call environmental sustainability, which also encompasses the new and emerging areas within clean tech, energy efficiencies, and the emerging blue economy. What we've seen in the labor market research, the most recent publication that we did about 6 months ago, is that the environmental sector did not see the same sort of V-shaped trajectory with a decline in jobs and then a growth again. So most of you have seen the Canadian job market lost 1 million jobs. That's a very well known and published fact. Within the environmental sector, over the first year of the pandemic, we actually saw a 5% growth. And our projections suggest that we will see a 17% growth by 2025. In addition to this massive growth we're experiencing in the environmental sector, we're also plagued with the retirement rate. Our latest stats show that we will now have, we estimate 30% of the current workforce will be retired by 2029, which is quite significant to go through that while you have growth in the sector as well. We will see, and we are seeing, a massive competition for talent really across the board. I've had the pleasure finally of being at 3 different industry workshops or conferences, one in Newfoundland, one in Alberta, and one in Ontario over the past 6 weeks. And it's sort of the same story that's coming out of all of those places. Projects are coming back online. A lot of projects that were on hold or didn't happen during the pandemic are now coming. So we're seeing a little bit of that post-pandemic boom that we were anticipating, even though it's a little bit too early to say that we are post-pandemic. For the economy, it kind of appears that way. We also had a very 18 months or so with very low turnover, artificially low. People didn't want to leave their jobs during the pandemic. Now that turnover is maybe artificially high, and the real competition for talent is emerging. We need people with appropriate skill, and that's a shortage at the moment. Environmental work is technical in nature, and technical skills are kind of a prerequisite to get into the sector and to get started in the careers there, which is a gap that we're seeing. But once people are hired, the bigger gap that we see in our labor market research in interviewing employers is not necessarily on the technical side. That's not where the biggest challenge is. It's more on the transferable skills. Project management is probably the biggest one. That's the main reason why companies see losses, and it's the main reason why they're not seeing the growth that they need. Project management seems to be quite easy if you look at it. I've managed large projects internationally, and if you just have the right tips and tools, you can manage almost any project the same way. So that's a big one that we need to focus on. Financial acumen is really a lack in education for technical skilled individuals. Don't have the same financial skills there. Industry knowledge, navigating environmental laws and regulations. Those are some of those areas that we really need to focus in on with as the sector is growing. Obviously, as we're talking to an audience from across the country today, there are definite regional differences, and I encourage everyone, if you're interested in the details, you can go to our website at eco.ca/research and download the detailed research reports for free. But a couple of things just to mention. In Quebec, for example, water and wastewater operators in a dire need for replacement of retiring workers. The age there is getting older, with the average age is getting older, and they're really struggling to replace those. Really across the board in every region, we're seeing a shortage of various types of engineers, engineering technologists, and life science professionals, as well as physical science professionals. I think we'll talk more about this later, but the senior manager level, the mid-level, is also a struggle, where we're seeing a lot of jobs come available, a lot of recruitment trying to happen. And a big one that I think we should focus in on is commercialization. There's a big funding environment in Canada to support with R&D, not so much commercialization. So the skill set there, how do you teach an entrepreneur who's got this great idea to turn that great idea into a viable business? That's where there is a gap. And the final thing I'll mention here before I pass it back to you, Sarah, is critical thinking. I don't have a lot of stats to back this up. It's not something that's in our labor market research, but it's something that I'm noticing more and more. We don't have that critical thinking that we need. One thing that frustrates me a bit, which would be a bit of a political statement, is that we're now told not to really question science anymore. We should just accept science, and in doing so, it almost becomes like science is a religion. We should question science. If we stop questioning science, it's no longer science. And that critical thinking comes in with one of the greatest growth opportunities we have within clean technologies. Let's take solar power. Is solar power in its current state contributing to net zero? Theoretically, yes. In practicality, right now, it's not. And the main reason for that is that we procure all components and all material from China, where manufacturing is taking place using coal-powered energy. And then we transport everything on big boats over to Canada. So before the solar panels have even had 1 day of operation, they've already emitted arguably more than what it would have been just to use the fossil fuel energy that we have here. So that's where I'm sort of thinking the critical thinking needs to happen. No, we should not discard solar, not at all. It is a way of the future. We have unlimited access to to sun. But how do we also look at the unintended consequences, some of those gaps that we still haven't addressed And how can we eliminate some of those? How can we perhaps create a manufacturing sector in Canada that's again competitive? And that's definitely needed if we do care about net zero, because in its current state, we may not be there. So I'll pass it back to you, Sarah.
That's really interesting, Kevin. I think you've really sort of hit on this idea that green skills is not one thing. That there are a number of professions and a number of opportunities within the environmental sector that really go beyond one occupational group or one sort of what we think of as being green skills. And maybe that's a great segue in sort of thinking about my question for you, Janet. I'm often talking about how polytechnics are responding to Canada's climate change targets, not only by training the next generation of talent, but thinking about industry action through applied research projects as community leaders when it comes to implementing green technology or building to net zero standards. Can you give us a sense of how Sheridan's thinking about and acting on environmental priorities across that spectrum?
For sure, happy to do that. And just, Kevin, thank you for laying the table so beautifully. I do think, there's this unique opportunity for Polytechnics. It really is, this is by definition a wicked problem. It's going to take all of us in different shapes and forms. But I think, Polytechnics at their best delivers on the skills needs of tomorrow, but also in the competency space that you talked about. And I'll give some examples of what we're doing at Sheridan on competency-based education. Our commitment to applied research, experiential education, and really radical engagement with industry, community, government partners. This notion of collaboration as a pedagogy, I think actually is really critical to the conversation we're having today. I do think I should probably start just by, talking a little bit about how Sheridan thinks about sustainability. So we as an organization have a history of deep commitment and an engagement with social, economic, environmental development and sustainability all across the communities that we serve. But I'd be remiss if I didn't start by pointing out that we see environmental sustainability as linked in those other elements of sustainable practice. And so, right now, what's happening at Sheridan is nothing short of a transformation of culture. And the learning experience, that we provide to students are relationships with external communities. It's really, it's a transformation that for us that builds on the foundations of our past work in energy and climate, but moves beyond that to engage everybody in our learning community, students, faculty, and staff around interlinked and intersectional social, economic, and environmental development. Because the ultimate goal in all of this is innovation that's grounded in creativity, curiosity, collaboration, and courage. But the end goal is really for us a more just, inclusive, equitable, and sustainable world. So Sheridan has adopted the SDGs as a component of our learning experience that's being integrated across all of our programs. We've adopted an institutional approach to sustainability, again, grounded in the SDGs, linking environmental, social, and economic goals and targets with social justice. We're looking at a framework or an approach that involves training as well as support for, training internally, both through our programs, our curriculum, our pedagogy, but also support for industry and community partners. In specific terms, on energy and climate action, we were an early adopter and a leader. Sheridan launched Mission Zero in 2010 with a focus on sustainability from a climate and energy perspective. That commitment provides an ambitious mandate to re-envision the college's energy future, to make significant reductions in our institutional footprint, to set breakthrough performance targets, and to truly integrate sustainability, energy, and climate curriculum across all of our faculties. We've integrated the SDGs across our programs and curriculum using living labs, for example, to educate and engage with students and local communities. the goal again is not just to educate, but to have this, broader positive impact. The last point I'll make is just, a plug for our entrepreneurship discovery growth engine, which we affectionately call EDGE. EDGE is really focused on startups, so traditional entrepreneurship work, but the startups that we're serving include a mix of interrelated social, environmental, and economically focused organizations within their business model. It didn't start with that focus 3 years ago, and I suspect you'll come back to this, Sarah, but the focus has really evolved and developed based on the types of founders within the regions we serve and kind of what's been brought to us. So across those 3 different spaces, we're integrating it in our strategic plan. It's certainly integral to our teaching, learning, and research, and then in our entrepreneurship innovation space.
Thank you very much. And Larry, bringing you into to this conversation too. I wanted to ask you what you're hearing from your industry partners in terms of what they need from Saskatchewan Polytechnic to support broader green transition in the province. And I imagine there that part of that equation is about skills, but that there are other priorities that some of your industry partners have as well. So, I mean, maybe I'll pass it to you. Are there some differences by sector? What are you hearing from industry? Are there some differences by occupation? And I do just see that there's a question in our Q&A from Cynthia about whether a PMP designation is required in terms of some of those project management skills. So while we can give Kevin a bit of a chance to answer that from a broader perspective, I wonder if you're getting kind of a sense of that in some of those specific kind of designations that people are looking for from a skill side, and what you're hearing from industry.
Well, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this, what I call a very important discussion. But before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge that our campuses are located on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territories, which are the ancestral lands of the Cree, the Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota peoples, and the traditional homeland of the Métis. I also want to say how great it is to join my 2 friends, Janet and Kevin, on this panel and have this discussion today about developing Canada's green talent pipeline. But I think we've got to do something about pipeline. It seems contradictory in terms here. So maybe we can come up with another name rather than pipeline. This conversation is important because I think it's safe to say that climate change, as Janet pointed out, is one of the major global challenges or wicked challenges of our time. Excuse me. And I think it's timely, given that the meetings that have been happening over the last couple of weeks, I guess today is the last day at COP26, where there was a global consensus, I would say, that climate change policy must address the just transition for workers. And an important step in that just transition is developing talent, which is what polytechnics and Canadian polytechnics and colleges do. Speaking of talent, Kevin talked about the challenge for talent in all sectors, in all industries. That's basically what I hear as well. I have the privilege of sitting on the Business Higher Education Roundtable Board. And when I talk to some of the CEOs of the largest companies in Canada about what's keeping them awake at night, it's certainly the need for skilled talent. When I bring that back down to a national level and talk to people in Saskatchewan, our Chamber of Commerce in Saskatchewan, what I hear them saying, their SMEs, their industries in Saskatchewan are struggling with talent, access to talent. When I look at the sector level within Saskatchewan, I talk to the IT sector, our ag sector, our health sector. Again, the number one concern is talent. So this huge need for talent in all sectors is creating a bit of a competition within Canada and within our industries as well. Added to that is the fact that other countries are starting to fish in our talent pool as well. And I've got stories, anecdotal at this point in time, talking to my peers on the East Coast, where a lot of the talent there is actually working for companies in the US. because they can in the way that work is changing these days. So, Kevin pointed to demographics. We've got people leaving the workplace because of COVID. We're seeing a bit of a wave of people leaving and wanting to change jobs. And now we've got immigration is down. We've also got other countries fishing in our talent pool. So this need for capital, human capital, is critical. And I think it's why today's discussion is so important. The good news is that Canada's colleges and polytechnics are well positioned to play a significant role in building that talent. It's the reason we exist, and it's the reason I believe that it's a polytechnic moment for the creation of green jobs as well as green innovation. Kevin's, the Eco Canada has done some excellent work on LMI, and I would encourage everyone to go to their website and look at that data. But when the recent labor market information regarding Saskatchewan says there's a need to fill about 6,000 net environmental job openings by 2029. Seeing as how we're a couple months or 1 month away from 2022, that's not many years to fill that pipeline. Some of those jobs are due to retirement, so about 4,800 will be existing workers expected to retire, but another 1,000 brand new jobs being created at the same time when all the other sectors are starting to really pick up steam and are looking for talent as well. Saskatchewan workers, when I talk to some of the organizations in Saskatchewan, are expected to benefit from infrastructure investment, including projects that source clean energy, as well as landfill, water treatment, wastewater management, and some of the carbon sink projects that are underway, Boundary Dam carbon capture facility being one of them. So let me just share some examples of what we're working on at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. This year, we partnered with the City of Saskatoon, the Saskatoon Tribal Council, Gabriel Dumont Institute, and Readiness Community Center to provide training for Indigenous peoples to gain those essential skills that we talked about and access to employment opportunities in water treatment and distribution facilities, such as the City of Saskatchewan's Saskatoon's water and waste operations. Another example is a partnership with Saskatoon Light and Power and the Saskatchewan Environmental Society. Led to the creation of Saskatchewan's first power generation cooperatives. And that gave students in our mechanical engineering technology programs some real hands-on applied learning while they worked on the project. The last 2 points what I wanted to make is I'm hearing from Saskatchewan employers the need for digital literacy, for project management, for leadership skills. And it's one of the reasons we're starting to embed those skills in our program. So certainly our new Bachelor of Construction Management program, we've embedded project management skills into that. We're embedding digital literacy skills into virtually all of our programs have a digital component. But it's leading to further on Kevin's point about these extra skills that need to be layered on to existing credentials, the strong need for reskilling and upskilling. So training that is available at the right time, the right place, and the right medium in the right amount. And it's the reason we launched our new School of Continuing Education in August of 2020. And it's the reason we launched our new Surge MicroCredentials in October. Reskilling and upskilling will be a way to give those workers that currently have a job those other skills that they're going to need, like project management, communication skills, financial literacy, leadership, build upon their existing credentials. We're looking to launch a Surge Green Skill MicroCredential soon, so keep a watch out for that. And the last point that I wanted to mention is RBC's New Thought Leadership Report, and I would encourage you to read that if you haven't. It's the 2 trillion transition, Canada's road to net zero. It really frames up nicely what we're talking about when it states that we all know the consequences of global warming. We know what it causes. We even know what we need to do to address it. But what we don't know is how to shift gears to get there in time. And the report also points out that innovation cannot succeed if there's not enough skilled workers. So one of the gears to get us there in time will be the development of our green workforce. And that's exactly what Canada's colleges and polytechnics do.
Great, thanks, Larry. I think it's funny talking about wastewater. Is there anybody from Quebec that's listening? Kevin says they need some wastewater technicians and folks there to work there. It sounds like you got some that you're pushing out at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Talk about fishing in somebody else's pool. They're going to be coming after you.
Exactly.
It's awesome though, Sarah, as you know, listening to kind of the arc of Kevin laying the table and you know, Larry and I both celebrating what's happening on campus. I do think there's this odd inflection moment, right? Where, you know, there's so much anxiety about what the future of work looks like, what opportunity looks like. You know, particularly for young people, I'm so empathetic to you know, their post-COVID imagination. But this is the opportunity space. And I think that's the language that we have to start talking about it in. I think, you know, that's the shift that you started to see amongst kind of, you know, the up and coming generation. But there really is opportunity here that I think polytechnics are uniquely suited to seize on.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I mean, and you raise really, you know, my next question, which is about what are youth interested in doing? Because I mean, I see a tremendous amount of youth activism when it comes to the environment. And, you know, we talked about environmental issues, and I found time and again that jobs in the economy have sort of taken over, and the environment keeps being slipped back to, you know, somewhere lower on the agenda. But this generation really seems to be making some decisions about where do they want to work, where do they want to study, where do they want to live, based on values that include the environment. And so I'd just be interested in whether, you know, you're seeing that and how that plays out with like you say, that kind of youth enthusiasm about, you know, where do they go and where are those opportunities? How's that playing out at Sheridan?
Yeah, you know what, there's, Kevin will know this better than us probably, but, you know, there's a huge amount of data now about the energy and enthusiasm with which, you know, kids in primary school, but for certain in junior and secondary school, you know, the extent to which they see sustainability broadly defined as pivotal to not just their future, but the future of the planet. And you know, so if we assume that number, you know, is at or above 66%, I think that really signals a shift, because, you know, as important as the environment was 10, 15, 20 years ago, I do think the urgency has been heightened, unfortunately, because of the reality. But, you know, we know a lot about this generation and their struggle to see too far into the future. This is actually right in front of them now. So, you know, anecdotally, we've seen a huge increase in the energy and enthusiasm for programs that explore sustainability themes. And that's not just in business, it's not just in engineering. You know, a significant number of our programs explicitly address sustainability. Programs like architectural technology, interior design, ethics, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, you know, certainly mechanical, electrical, chemical, environmental programming, including engineering, all across our advanced manufacturing. You know, the energy is palpable. The urgency is increasingly real. Even just look at, if you were to survey across the country, colleges and universities, take a look at clubs, organizations, student union and student organization priorities. And I think you'd be hard pressed not to note the rapid increase in the number of clubs and organizations focused on climate and sustainability, again, broadly defined, and the number of student leadership organizations truly vested, not just in traditional, you know, climate sustainability, but the imperative for a more just and equitable world. So yeah, lots of energy, sometimes hard to harness. I will say it's sometimes hard to harness. And you know, we almost need a project manager, Kevin, to manage the energy and enthusiasm sometimes. but it's a good thing, and it bodes well, for the monumental task in front of us.
Yeah, and so go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to make a comment on, like, I think you raise a good point. I think the interest level in the environment is very high among the young people in the next generation. Where I still think we have a bit of a gap there is the career awareness. How can you take that interest and passion and make it a career? I still think that it's not as high as it should be. I know there are every one of the institutions that you guys represent, and probably that are on the call here, will have multiple environmental programs at the colleges that would lead to environmental careers. But still, in the general population, there's not that same sense. I still, when I go out on the streets and talk to people or friends and family, they don't always, oh, you work with an environmental, okay, so you must be liking what the Greenpeace is doing. You might also be maybe doing the protest march there. So it's still a disconnect sometimes between the workforce and the activists, and I think that's where we all need to kind of work together to bridge that gap.
Maybe I could make a comment
please go ahead,
reply to that as well, Sarah. One of the things that Polytechnics are really good at is applied research, Kevin. So that's bringing an industry problem, or someone that's an entrepreneur or a startup company that has an idea onto our campuses and bring that problem to our students to solve. So we have in each of our organizations, Janet, mine, as well as the other Polytechnics, thousands of square feet of makerspace technology. And we're able to expose, maybe someone that is in a civil engineering technology program to some really interesting careers in the environmental sector, in the green space, by getting them involved in solving some of industry's problems in that space. And one example, this year, one of our applied research showcase winners was a civil engineering technology student. Scott was his name. I remember him well. We had a lot of conversations. But his project looked at ways to make concrete more sustainable and economical. And he found that by using 30% less slag replacement, which is a byproduct of steel manufacturing, builders could accumulate up to 13 points toward LEED certification and save money on the cement cost. So, by exposing them to some of these problems, they're able to start to understand and realize some of the potential in this space, as well as in a career.
Yeah, no, and one of the things I think is interesting in sort of talking about that gap is in some of the initiatives that are actually happening on campus about like making a campus net zero. Like, what does that mean? Building a building that's got, that you can see into the walls, you can see the technology behind it. Those are, I think, better ways of making the link between, we can have a zero waste initiative on campus. We can build a LEED certified building. You got to be able to see the application of what that means sort of more broadly.
You know what, Sarah? So we've done that at our newest campus in Mississauga, and I would just, for others on the phone involved in capital projects, it's amazing the difference that has made, the transparency about the innards of the building, so to speak. I was just going to come back though. We can talk, and I think it's a great point, having the consciousness around, what green careers looks like and how we define talent. I feel pretty strongly that the next, decade and in fact generation of talent is going to have climate consciousness as a core competency. So, I really believe, and this won't surprise anybody given that, I champion Sheridan, but that creativity is a core competency to work in an innovation economy, that you just can't really succeed and thrive in the absence of some creative capacity, which doesn't mean you're dancing or singing, although we have those people. You really do need to be able to think creatively, to ideate, and then to distill. I feel the same way about climate consciousness. And so on the one hand, really champion, green jobs. But, the flip side of that is if you don't know how to manage a project, or if you aren't conscious in supply chain, one of our degree programs about the climate imperative, I'm actually not sure, as the notion of educated person evolves, I think an educated person now and in the coming years has to be climate conscious. And I think that's the evolution that we all have to make. It's not about a program or about a course or about a syllabus. It's actually about, at its core, it's about what being educated, being responsible, what citizenship looks like.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Go ahead, Larry. Yeah.
Yeah, the other way that we're able to expose our students that are in our programs to some of the opportunities that exist for a career in the green economy is through, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention BHAR, Business Higher Education Roundtable, and their initiative to have 100% work-integrated learning opportunities. And I know Janet's programs, as well as all of my peer Polytechnics across Canada, have work-integrated learning components built into their courses and their programs, where students spend time with industry. And when they spend time with industry who are working on in some of these green spaces, they get exposure to some of the exciting careers that exist as well. So there's a number of ways we can do that. And by embedding environmental into our curriculum as well, I guess my analogy would be safety. We teach safety in all of our courses. And what that does for industry is every student that leaves is aware of safety. And if something isn't safe in their work environment, they're the first to bring that up because they've been trained that safety is number one. If we start to talk about environmental issues, sustainability, greening within our programs, they're going to take that out to industry and actually start to change some of the culture in industry as well.
It's a good point. And maybe Kevin, I'll turn back to you. You mentioned earlier about that mid-career managers, the requirement there in the environmental sector too. It can't just be about new entrants. It's also got to be about how do we keep people who are already in the workforce moving forward, getting the skills they need. And maybe this is a bit of an opportunity to answer Cynthia's question about the PMP designation. Is the project management designation actually required when you think about project management, or is there the ability to have that skill shown in different ways? But I wonder about really drawing on that capacity at Canada's Polytechnics to fill that upskilling and reskilling need, and think about the management and the leadership training as you have a part of the workforce that is nearing retirement. That seems like a really critical part of filling the void as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And the smallest age segment in the sector is really the 40-year-old segment, which is a challenge, right? You have an aging population that are retiring. We've actually done quite well to attract young people into the workforce, and there's a number of different, Larry mentioned a couple of them, funding programs that the federal government has. We are a delivery organization for work-integrated learning, for internship funding or wage subsidy funding for recent graduates up to the age of 30. These are great initiatives to build that pipeline, but that's more longer term building the pipeline, right? You can't have someone go, despite what some believe, that you can't go straight from school into a senior management role. You have to acquire skills and competencies in the workforce before you are there. And work-integrated learning, great, you graduate now with competencies, with work experience, which will shorten the time it would take you to get to the more mid-level. But we have a gap at the mid-level. We have to address key skills in management, business operations, leadership, project management. Those transferable skills we've talked about already a few times today are important. We need to create those pathways, and this is probably where we also need to address more, is how do we transition someone from a declining sector into an emerging growing sector? We've often talked about oil and gas into the environment, and many of those jobs are relatively easily transferable. Sometimes this was a bigger gap before, but the salary discrepancy was scary for some. But there are many skill sets that are similar, project management probably being the most obvious one, but also that if you've worked on projects in the same areas with the same stakeholders, with the same indigenous communities, in an exploration of natural resources, that you can kind of transfer that into, okay, now it's time to clean up, now it's time to reclaim, remediate, which is important. We as some of you know, or I think maybe most of you know, we accredit programs at the post-secondary level within environmental programs. And one of the things we try to do every time we go there is, okay, well, let's bring some of those industry people in, let's bring our labor market research in, and let's work collaboratively. Okay, where are some of the areas of growth? What are some of those things we can improve on? How are some of those things that we can support from an outside perspective with ideas, with tips on how to align programs? And finance comes back, project management comes back. And I realize how hard it is in technical programs. Some of them are 2-year programs. How can you cram everything into those little programs? And I've been part of many program advisory committee meetings where you're sort of trying to debate, okay, that needs to go in, but what goes out? Those are never easy. But I think project management, if you want to make a segue into Cynthia's question, definitely always need to be there. Managing budgets, managing deliverables, scope. It's in a way easy, but in a way, it's, if you don't do it right, it's disastrous. And as I'm sure many will agree on, the difference between success and failure is usually this much, right? It's not that much that differentiate between success and failure. So Cynthia asked the question if the PMP designation is required, and the quick answer is no. The longer answer is it's a uniquely Canadian question. I've had the pleasure and the privilege in my young career to work in many different countries and continents on project work that's quite exciting. And Canada is very different in that maybe it's because it's so heavily regulated that people ask the question, do I have to have it? Is this a must? Is this a requirement? Is this part of a regulation? That I have never really seen anywhere else. It's sort of, no, you build your competence, you build your portfolio of skills, and then you market those. So you have designations, the PMP designation. I think it's great to market that you've gone through some steps and you've learned some skills. I've done it myself. I thought it was very useful. And I still use some of those checklists in project work. So I think it's very beneficial. It's not a requirement. Maybe some employers would say you have to have it, but I've never seen any employer say, oh, you have that, that wasn't needed. So it's all about building your own competence. We have a designation for environmental professionals, the EP designation. I'm very passionate about that one. It's not a requirement, you don't have to have it. But as we have more and more people from different academic streams coming into the environmental sector, I think it is important to really professionalize the whole sector and set a set of common standards, ethics standards, commitment to professional development, commitment to lifelong learning, going back to continuing education programs and building your skill set further is really essential. And being part of a community of professionals from different academic backgrounds, because you would need that in most projects. We sometimes, I feel that regulatory drivers can limit that breadth that we need. The environmental sector is multidisciplinary, and that is something we need to treasure. We cannot make this is engineers only, or this is biologists only, or this is scientists of this branch only. No, it is all of them, and they need to work together, and we need to create that. So long way to answer a simple question, but no, it's not necessary, but I would recommend it.
You know what,
go ahead, Janice.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, that was the perfect plug for MicroCredentials too. And I do think, you know, I'm not universally sold on MicroCredentials as the be all and end all. I think we all have to be conscious about what can be delivered in short format. But I do think in the space that is reskilling and upskilling, tweaking somebody's lens on the world, for your example about oil and gas to green economy, where there are significant transferable skills, there's two values to a micro-credential experience. And we've been doing a lot of this with industry across the Northern GTA. The first is obviously, the content and the learning that comes with it. The second is the access to colleagues. You build your network and you have industry opportunity there, whether through applied research, through placements, or through capstone projects in some instances. And so, there's such a real, genuine opportunity here for folks whose minds are open and who see opportunity. We're not talking about 4-year degrees. We're not talking in every instance about even 2 or 3 year programs of transition. we can ladder through micro-credentials to ready people for a pivot. And I know you do lots of that, Larry, so do we.
Yeah, no, great points. And the whole idea of lifelong learning is forever now. And no matter what career you're in, no matter what occupation you have to continue. But that doesn't mean you throw away all your old credentials and start over again. And that's the beauty of meeting every learner, no matter where they are on their learning journey, and providing them with those episodes of learning to keep them employed or to help them pivot in the job they have or the job they want to get. And that's why we developed the whole suite of Surge MicroCredentials. It's why Polytechnics are delivering them now. We're agile, we're responsive, we work with industry, we understand what those competencies are. We deliver competency-based education, so we can provide competency at a time, and they become stackable. So you stack a number of competencies together to possibly get a credential. And we've created actually a Surge suite for industry to come in and talk to us about what are those competencies that they want to kind of, I guess, layer on to existing credentials that their employees have. And we've developed a set of micro-credentials for the mining sector within Saskatchewan. They needed leadership skills. So we've developed a set of micro-credentials, a Surge micro-credentials around leadership. Project management could be another one, but that's an example of how they can be used. And I know Janet and my Polytechnic peers across the country are doing that as well.
And maybe what I'll do is, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'll just remind anybody who's tuning in to please go ahead and put questions into the Q&A. We do have a few questions, so I'll turn to those. Maybe this one is for you, Kevin. I think, as we develop programs and courses in low carbon economy, how is the industry readiness to have jobs available in these new areas? Do you feel like industry's ready to accept people who are taking that kind of credential?
Yeah, I think the thing to be aware of that is the difference between low carbon courses or climate change courses that deals with awareness of an issue. Those I think we have lots of, and I'm not sure they are really needed in industry. We got, first, I won't mention the names, but there were household names of big engineering firms that came to us and said, we don't need any more people that can tell us that the climate is changing, or what the impact of that is, and how negative that is, and how challenging that is, and how we need to do better. They need someone with the actual skills and solutions to that. So that's why we advised one institution that we partner with, Royal Roads University. We need to create a climate change program that's really tailored towards the science and solutions of climate change. How can you go into a company and say, all right, if you're going to build a dock, this is kind of where you should build that dock, forecasting the water level at some point in the future. So then you have just a small example of a concrete solution. That's what is appealing to organization, and that I think would be, yes, there's definitely employers that are ready to hire people with those skills, but they should be tied to solutions as opposed to tied to the problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is actually really interesting. So Cynthia's asked us a question, and maybe I'll turn this to Larry and Janet. Do you think the Polytechnic role should be ensuring grads in non-environmental career streams are aware of environmental issues and challenges? And I just, building on Kevin's point, the awareness of the problem is a piece, but it's only one piece. However, in those non-environmental streams, is it a part of the responsibility of creating those good citizens that Janet talked about, making sure awareness of environmental issues and challenges goes across programs? Larry, do you want to grab that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of the safety analogy that I spoke to a little earlier on, but in introducing those values within all of our curriculum, so that students are aware of that, is really important to us. I mean, we signed on to the SGD goals as well, and we embed that into all of our programs. That language and that understanding every sector, I believe, has an opportunity to contribute to sustainability. So it's important that whether you're in the mining sector, the agriculture sector, the manufacturing sector, our manufacturing sector is busier than ever now with applied research projects based around sustainability. So we try and layer that and introduce it in all of our programming and all of our curriculum. To Janet's point, some of the buildings that we teach in, so that students are exposed to it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I do. I totally agree. I think when we're at our best, there's overt learning and then there's covert learning, right? So a lot of the covert learning has to happen in spaces and in communities that I think embrace the SDGs. And, I tell folks all the time, like it's awesome that we're teaching, in our apprenticeship program. I can see Dean Rogers's question across our skilled trades. Certainly environmentally sound practices have been long embedded in those teaching models, in the programming and in the curriculum. So, we teach, solar tech across skilled trades, and that's relatively new. If you want to graduate through our electrical program, those are core competencies that you absolutely must have. But I think graduating students in the absence of an understanding of not just climate consciousness to the point, what we teach is applied skills. So it can't be just the theory, or we've not delivered on our mission. So the notion of applied programming at Polytechnics, the application of what you've learned, whether you're in a business program or you're in an engineering program, or frankly, you're in an experiential design program, is a critical competency that should be demonstrated before people leave. I'm equally convinced that we shouldn't be graduating students who don't understand what equity looks like in practice. So we can theoretically talk about it. We all have policies, but if we don't figure out how to better and more equitably engage every member of our community, economically, socially, I'm no less satisfied that we've actually done our job. So, again, we're choosing to think about the SDGs in their broadest possible sense, but I think it's kind of redefined what it means to be an educated person and what the role of post-secondary is. I think, it has to be applied, and through capstones and applied research and the traditional ways of demonstrating knowledge, we all have to be accountable for making sure that learning happens and is affirmed.
To Dean's, to the point of Dean's question too, are you seeing when apprentices are coming back for their technical training, are you seeing that these are some of the skills that they are learning on the job too? So, it's not only something that happens in a, 6-week or 8-week or 10-week technical training, but is happening on the job. It's embedded. And so they're coming back and asking that. Do you have a sense of whether or not those on-the-job experiences are also reflecting those requirements?
I have a couple of thoughts, but you answer, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. I'm so glad this question got answered, because apprentices sometimes get left out, and it's absolutely critical for apprenticeship and our tradespeople to be skilled in some of the green skills as well. We have, we have the home builders in Saskatoon have now come to us asking us to start to work with them to develop skills for their workforces, to start to upskill in net zero homes and in solar and in geothermal and some of the green skills in the carpentry program as well. We've got the Saskatchewan Trade Commission. Jeff Ritter the other day in a meeting brought up the fact that we have to start introducing green skills into all of our trades. So again, through his advisory groups, he started to hear that. So we're starting to get the requests coming actually from industry itself, which I think is very positive.
Yeah, I was just going to add same. What I have heard from some students is that the technology that they are learning in our Magna Center for Skilled Trades may not yet have been fully adapted or adopted by industry. And so, this again is the beauty of work integrated learning and learning integrated work. Industry, I think, is being pushed in some instances by students who are then in the workplace saying, what if, why not, how about? And that's a great thing. And I think, again, all of our campuses offer skilling, reskilling, upskilling, not just to students enrolled in formal programs, but to industry partners too. And so we're doing more of that than we certainly used to in the green space.
And Ben's bringing up kind of an interesting point about there's one thing about trying to embed green skills and some of those requirements within existing programs. Is there a need for brand new programs? And Kevin, I don't know if you have sort of a sense of this, because I know Eco Canada does some certification of programs. Are you seeing the need for maybe a new 2-year diplomas or certificates, graduate certificates even that are like new in order to respond to need?
Yeah, I don't normally like new just for the sake of new, but one of the things that I like about the academic landscape across this country is that it is quite diverse. And I like that there are so many different nuances and different focus areas of the various programs. Are there a need for programs to be uniquely focused in that space of sustainability and construction? Definitely. I think they do exist many places, but that definitely is an area of focus for the country where green buildings is heavily funded. It's one. I think commercial buildings might be one of those, if not number one, is top 3 of the greatest emitters. So if you want to do something with that, it would be you need skilled people at both at the apprenticeship level, all the way up to the PhD level, who can kind of handle that issue. So maybe someone else can talk about whether or not you have adequate programs in that space. But I've seen programs in that space, and I know it's the wave of the future as well.
Well, and Janet's mentioned, this idea of micro-credentials. I know Larry's talked about that as well. So there is that breadth of, is it a new diploma program, or are there ways to think about somebody that has a previous credential that is now able to take advantage of some of these sort of more discrete add-on skills? Do you have any thought on that, Larry?
Well, so it's both. I mean, and that's one of the things that colleges and polytechnics are so good at, is the agility and listening to industry. So, we don't offer programs where there isn't a job waiting at the other side and where there isn't a demand for students. And so if there's a demand by students for a particular program, and if there's a demand by industry, that's our driving factors. So one of the way we develop new programs is we sit down with industry, and I'm really encouraged, and it often happens when there's a need for talent, that the partnering between academia and industry gets a little stronger. And they're willing to sit down with us and talk about what their needs are. And we have a process that we all use to develop new programs. We sit down with a group of industry experts. They instruct us on what competencies they want the graduate to have when they graduate from the program. And then we use our expertise in developing curriculum to develop curriculum around those competencies and the way to best teach it. And that's the way we put programs together. And certainly, I believe we need a little of all. You need the short courses and you need the longer programs, because again, we're meeting different learners at different parts of their learning journey. And some of the new learners coming out of high school may want to take a 2-year or 4-year program and get totally immersed. Others may want to bolt on a credential on top of an existing credential that they do have. Others may just want to learn a competency so they can do one job. But it's all of the above, I think. And the ability for us to develop those longer programs is certainly one of the things that we're very good at, and we've done for a number of areas.
Great. Now I know that our time is running out, and rather than then go too long and risk losing people dropping off, Kevin, I just wanted to go back to you for kind of a final word here, and it's because work integrated learning has come up so often in this conversation, and I know that Eco Canada has a number of programs that are really meant to make it easy for industry to take on students. Can you say a few words on that, given that you've got some of the college community here to hear the message?
Yeah, no, I think we have right now quite a bit of funding from ESDC, or Employment Social Development Canada, to support students that are currently enrolled in academic programs to get work experience before they graduate. That can be a formal co-op, can be an internship, can be a term off, and the funding there is typically $5,000 to $7,500 for a 4-month placement. And then those we do encourage people to take advantage of. And then once they graduate, we have funding from a number of different government departments to help get the first year's salary cost subsidized, and training costs. So that's why we work with employers. We have a lot of employers, and uniquely, we actually have more employers looking for positions than we have job seekers at the moment. So this is a message that should go back to job seekers that may have assumed that there aren't any jobs at the moment. A lot of jobs and a lot of funding programs to help make those matches. So that's I'd be happy to have that discussion with any of the work integrated learning offices at the various campuses around, and as well as career services. We have quite a few. As one of the things that this current government is very generous with, it is funding salary subsidies to get people established in their careers, which is very important.
Fantastic. So we've reached the end of our time. I want to thank our panelists again, Kevin, Larry, and Janet, for sharing your thoughts. If there are other questions we've missed, we'll circle back to you on those. And I'm looking forward to seeing this group at a future webinar. So thanks again to our panelists, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.